What's up? What's up, foamies? Thanks for stopping by the shop. My name is Herschel Zahn, and today I want to talk about masks. Now, as the world gets ready to open back up, one of the things that we're going to be dealing with is people want you to wear masks, and that's very important not only for your health, but for others. And I figure, why go outside wearing something wimpy and puny like this? I want something stylish. I want something, I don't know, retro, maybe even 17th century. So today, we're going to make Plague Doctor masks. Last year I got to direct a music video for the band Poetry of the Dead. The lead singer, Jason William Allen, is a good friend of mine, and he is also completely obsessed with Plague Doctor masks. He collects them. So he wanted to feature some never-before-seen masks in the music video, so I produced about 6 different masks for that production. I met another awesome maker named Jonas on Facebook. He had a version of this template and then he sent it to me. I refined it and turned it into a base template that I could use for all the designs you saw in the video. I've got an idea for a new variation that's steampunk themed that I want to try out. So let's get to it.
This is about the 10th time I have made this mask, so I have all of my pieces already cut out on poster board. Trace your pieces onto 8mm foam. The top and bottom of the beak will need a left and right side, so flip your pattern over for the left side. The top and bottom of the beak will be cut at a slight inward angle. All the other straight cuts are done at 90-degree angles. For the circular cuts, I'm going to use my scroll saw. Now you can do this with a razor knife, but I just prefer the look of the scroll saw. For the goggles, I'm going to start by punching a hole in the foam using a Forstner bit on my drill press. Then I'll go back to the scroll saw and carefully cut out the inner circle and the outer circle. I'll refine the profile of the outer circle on my belt sander, getting it as close as I can. Then we'll add a large bevel running from the inner circle all the way to the edge of the outer circle that gets refined using a Dremel tool. Please make sure you're wearing a mask, unlike me here. This is why I need a producer. Alright, this thing is called a planishing stake. It's a rip on an old blacksmithing tool used to curve metal. I use a metal punch ladle that I got at the dollar store as the top of my stake, so I heat that up, then I heat both sides of the foam and roll the foam along the planishing stake to add a curve to the top of the mask. This is going to take some stress off of those seams on the top of the mask. We add contact cement to each side of the pieces that we're going to be gluing together, wait for it to dry to attack, and then we can start assembling. For long seams like this, I find it's best to line up the first edge, work your way up slightly, and then go to the other side and work your way back to where you stopped. This way you have nice clean seams. There's lots of ways you can do it, just take your time and make sure your outer seams look good so you don't have to sand it. For the bottom of the mask, we're going to do the exact same thing. We'll start at one edge, go to the other edge, meet in the center. You really can see those inward angle cuts there and how it's going to give us a nice steep corner at the bottom of the mask. One little trick I picked up by making costumes for kids' parties is these seams get under a lot of stress. So I like to take a small piece of 2mm craft foam and back up all of my seams. It creates a nice little mechanical bond on the back. It'll really help the longevity of whatever you're building. With those seams shored up, we're going to attach the bottom of the mask to the top of the mask. This is done at a simple 90-degree angle. With the finishing I am planning for this mask, I'm going to cover all of these seams, so I am probably taking way more time to get this right than I need to, but that's my perfectionism getting the best of me. We're going to use that same technique with the 2mm craft foam to create the straps for the goggles and the seam coverings for the rest of the mask. These are the width of a art ruler. I have several around my shop, so that's what I use to measure those out. Once we've covered all of the seams with that craft foam, I'll use a rotary tool to clean up all of the edges, and then we'll add the goggles. Make sure you put the goggles on over the straps, that way they look like they're actually holding it on from underneath. Press those goggle pieces down tight, and then the last bit of mask construction I like to do is any remaining raw foam, I give a little bit of a beveled edge to. It helps it look like some other material than foam.
All right, this is all looking good. I'm loving my shape, I'm loving the symmetry, I love my straps. I'm gonna put rivets down each one of these so it really looks like this thing has been put together in a 17th century fashion. Now, I wanna also give this a little bit of a gas mask aesthetic since I'm going for a steampunk look. So I was looking around my shop, I found this little can of enamel, and that is just about the right size for a gas mask cylinder. So we're gonna use this and several different layers of foam to make our cylinders.
This is totally freehand making, and I didn't take measurements. Bad YouTuber. I cut out a rectangle based on the width and height of that canister and glued it together to make a circle. For the top and bottom of the canister, we're going to use some scrap floor mat foam and I'm going to glue it together using super glue and super glue accelerant. Doing this because it gives me about a 6 to 8 second work time as opposed to the instantaneous bond of the contact cement. We'll cut a small hole in the top of the canister for a cardboard tube. This is left over from some ribbon my wife uses to make wreaths, and that's what we're going to use to connect the canister to the mask. I'll cut down the cardboard tube so that I have about an inch between the top of the canister and the bottom of the mask. For the canister accents, we're going to start with some 3mm craft foam. Main purpose of this is to cover that big seam on the side. Then we're going to use the other 3 just to make it more aesthetically pleasing. These will just be a vertical detail piece. The sides get glued on with contact cement, and the top will be held on with a combination of hot glue and the cardboard tube. I'm going to use more 2mm craft foam to continue to cover the seams on all portions of the canisters. This gets wrapped around the side and the bottom. I want to create an air intake vent on the bottom of each one of these canisters, so I'll heat up some 12mm EVA foam and press my can of enamel into the foam so I can get the shape and the radius. I end up tracing this out with a permanent marker, but that's just to help me see it when I move to the bandsaw. I'll set the bandsaw table to 45 degrees and cut a sharp angle into the foam. This gets cleaned up and refined on my belt sander. This is going to help me shape the profile and get rid of those bandsaw lines, and then I'll do the final shaping with my rotary tool. Once the shaping's done, we'll glue it onto the bottom of the canister and we'll score some lines for the vent. Now you can do this freehand or you can use a ruler. I just did it freehand. You'll very carefully cut lines across the entire bottom of the piece of foam about 1 millimeter deep. Cover the entire bottom one direction, flip it around, go on the crosshatch, and do the other. Then we'll add some heat to open up the lines and create that vent. This is still my favorite part of foam smithing. I can never leave well enough alone, so I wanted to add a little more detail to the canisters, did a quick Google image search, and came up with a Crusader cross. I cut out 8 of these little crosses from 2mm craft foam, 4 for each canister, and glued them on using some super glue and super glue accelerant. Little detail, but I absolutely loved it. I drew some inspiration from Western cowboy boots, and I want to create a beak tip for the end of the mask. I'm going to use the top and bottom of my beak pattern, about 4 inches of the very end of it, and then I'll use a can of enamel to create a little circle, a little half moon shape there at the top. These get cut out at a 45-degree inward angle on the sides, and then I did an outward angle on the top for the crescent. I wanted to add a little more detail, so I drew my Crusader cross on, scored in some lines, added some heat. We're going to do that on the tops only on each side. This will get glued together and then it'll slip right on the end of the beak.
All right, so this is looking really, really nice. I am going to have to probably shave down the front of the mask ever so slightly on each of the 4 sides to make this fit a little more snugly, but that's going to give me that nice boot tip look, and that'll be a contrasting color. I'm going to go ahead and punch the holes in the bottom of the mask to attach my canisters, just like that, and then I'll be ready to do my Plastidip.
Each piece gets 2 coats of black Plastidip, and the mask and canisters get 2 coats of hammered bronze Rustoleum. I'm going to use some silver metallic Rustoleum for the beak tip. Oh, look at that. So pretty. Back inside, we're going to do our first black shoe polish coat. I like to put this on a little bit of a swirl pattern. I think it gives me just a little bit of a feeling like it's almost a Damascus feel. I'm going to put that on the mask and on the canisters, and then we'll wipe off the excess with a rag. I've started using cloth rags as opposed to paper towels because I can wash the rags and, I'll help the environment where I can. All of my seam coverings, that 2mm craft foam is going to get a coat or 2 of black acrylic paint. We're going to do this for the mask and for the top and bottom of the canisters. The beak tip, I'm going to cram some black acrylic paint down into the crevices created by our heat. This is going to give me some nice contrast. You'll see it here in a second. There it is. No contrast and contrast. We like contrast. I'm going to paint the goggles with that same black acrylic, and then the straps for the goggles we'll paint with some brown acrylic. This will get a shoe polish wash later just to add some texture. And speaking of texture, I'm going to do a really fun trick. I'm going to heat up that foam, and then I'm going to take a little ball of aluminum foil, and I'm going to press that ball into that warmed foam to give it a leather texture. Can't remember where I picked this tip up, but it works really well, so try it out. I'll use some silver metallic for the vertical details on the canisters, and then we'll cram some black acrylic into the vents and wipe it off with a rag. Next, we're going to do a dry brushing technique with some silver. You get some paint on your brush, wipe as much of it off as you can, and then dry brush it on to whatever you're painting. This is going to pop those girls out really, really nice. It's so pretty. Last little bit, I'm going to use some gold metallic acrylic for the crosses just to give it a little extra spice and throw one more color in there. It'll pop off nicely with my rivets. Decided to use a little bit of a different technique for my rivets this time. I'm using flat thumbtacks. I got my first group at the dollar store, ran out because I miscalculated how many I needed, so I had to order some more off of Amazon. These got painted with a gold metallic spray paint, and then I took a copper and kind of stippled it over all of it. Once I get those put on there with some super glue, I'm going to use some shoe polish to go over the entire thing with a nice black wash to add some weathering, and it's going to look fantastic. Ultimately, I had to shave down my mask using the belt sander. That was a lot of work wasted. Gonna throw some hot glue on the mask, and then we'll put some hot glue into the boot tip. And you're not gonna see it in the video, but I did actually heat up the mask and the boot tip so that I got as tight a fit as I possibly could for this boot tip, and it just looks smashing. Now we're back to gluing rivets. I found about an inch space between each one looked great, so those got super glued in on each side of the seam cover. For the lenses, I went to the dollar store and got the biggest pair of Liz Taylor sunglasses I could find, popped the lenses out, and hot glued them in. I used low temperature hot glue on this because I have to hold them in by hand for a while until it solidifies, so be careful because you can really burn yourself badly on hot glue. I know from experience. To hold the mask on, we're going to use some 1-inch elastic. I'll hot glue it down and then hot glue a little piece of craft foam over it to help hold it on. I'm going to add a backpack strap, so we're going to cut the elastic in half. I'll burn it to keep it from unraveling, and then I'll add that quick release backpack clip so that it comes on and off easily. The last step will be to insert my cardboard tubes. I'm not going to permanently affix these just in case I want to take them off if I'm at a con or walking around and, want to look down.
This thing is so cool, I think I'm gonna let you try it on for size.
There's a plague on. You need a map.
And there you have it. A Steampunk Plague Doctor Mask so you can go out in style during the pandemic. I want to thank Jason William Allen and Ashley Vega for coming out and starring in our little cutscene, and I want to thank all of my crew at Creative Motion Studios. I literally couldn't do this without you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to make your own Plague Doctor mask, I am going to put a link to this base template in the description as well as a materials list. If you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the foamtastic content we've got coming your way. That's going to wrap up this episode of Hold My Barge. I'm Herschel Zond, and I need to go grocery shopping. I need some bread and some milk, maybe some eggs. Oh, toilet paper. I've got to find toilet paper.